Welcome everyone to Mapping Mental Health, hosted by United Way Oxford. My name is Kelly Gilson and I am the Executive Director with United Way Oxford. And I am thrilled to be able to be kind of your facilitator, moderator here this evening. We have a number of local experts who are going to help us learn more about mental health and well-being, and certainly learn more about programs and services available here in Oxford County, specifically to help us and our loved ones, as some of us may need some support during these really difficult times. So before I just give you a little tee up of the evening and introduce our panelists, I'm just actually going to begin by doing a territorial acknowledgement. And I am going to do this because at United Way, we have started to do this, embrace this as part of our opening for our regular board meetings, etc. And we do it because we want to share our information, and we take turns doing it. And I think it's a really nice way kind of make this real. And so to start, I will say, I here in my home, but also in the home community of United Way, I'm acknowledging that we are meeting on Indigenous land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, as we gather here, there have been Indigenous peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional territory of the Ananashpek, Lenape, and the Haudenosaunee. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic and current connection to this place. And I recognize other Indigenous peoples who have made and are making, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and our country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the current contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country. So thank you for giving me a moment to do that. And again, welcome to our Mapping Mental Health. So just really quickly, for those of you who may not be familiar with United Way is 100% local. We are 100% Oxford County based, and we invest in a number of areas because of the generous support of our community. And our three priority areas are moving people from poverty to possibility, ensuring that kids can be all that they can be, and building strong and healthy communities. And for us, in strong and healthy communities, that includes a significant amount of investments, particular to mental health and well-being, and a sense of belonging for community. So that's a perfect fit for this evening, of course. And while that is those are our normal priority areas and what we always fund, this past year has seen incredible challenges, and we have been blessed to have access to a number of federal grants that we have also been able to distribute to some of the partners that you will meet tonight, as well as many, many others, for both services for seniors and for vulnerable people across Oxford County. So over the last year, almost a year through this pandemic, we have been able to invest an additional $550,000+ to help those who are most impacted by this pandemic. And frankly, we know that this pandemic has been incredibly difficult for everyone. There are difficult days and difficult weeks and times. We also know that while we are all in the same situation, we really aren't. I think what we hear a lot of is we're in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And that is absolutely true. For some, it might be a yacht, and for others, it's a dinghy, and everything in between. And so I think we all have to recognize that this is a challenging time for everyone, but that we are truly in this together. So these are, that's sort of my little bit of an intro, other than I also ask you to bear with us that this technology, while perhaps not nearly as new as it was a year ago, it still, involves lots of, crying babies and barking dogs and phones ringing and everything in between. So bear with us. It just adds to the entertainment and information value that you're going to get. So I would like to thank our community partners who you will meet here in just a moment for joining us this evening. And just a few quick rules, if you will. We are going to be talking about mental health and well-being and local programs and services, but we're not going to be talking about sort of an individual or answering very specific personal questions. We are going to be sharing general types of information. This session is recorded, so your panelists you can see and hear from. Everyone else is already muted and already their video is off, so that you don't have to worry about being picked up as part of this recording. But you are welcome to use the chat box, and we have two wonderful staff who are monitoring that, and we will be looking at those questions. You can ask questions, you can ask for clarification. We'll be looking at it as the evening goes on, and we will also be dealing with some of them as a Q&A after the first part of the presentation, which we expect will go to about 8:10 perhaps, and then we'll get into that Q&A. And I do want to just remind people that if something here triggers you, if you find it unsettling or extremely worrisome, there is no reason that you have to stay with us. If you've dialed in, you can certainly dial out, and please look after yourself. And there are resources available, and we will be listing some of those as well. And they're available on United Way's website, as well as the websites of our panelists. I know that they all have information as well. So here now I'll introduce our panelists. So I'll start with the Canadian Mental Health Association. And we have two folks joining us from CMHA. We have Christine and Stacy. And you know what, as I do this, perhaps I'll just give you a few moments to talk a little bit about CMHA in the context of this, and maybe just introduce yourself as to your role and what you do at CMHA and how that's a great fit for this evening. So Christine, do you want to take it away?
Sure. So I am an urgent needs case manager at CMHA. Basically what that means is I do a bit of everything, but most of my people that I work with are just people who can't afford to sit on a wait list. So are people that need kind of help right away. So I help out with that. I am also one of our clinicians that do our Frontline support program as well. That's been funded by United Way. So that's been a great program as well, especially within this COVID time. So that's one of the other things that I do at CMHA. Yeah, and if anybody's looking for support for CMHA in general, also going off, if you're feeling triggered at any point within this conversation, we do have our reach out, which is our 24-hour line, as well as a 24-hour web chat. So we are involved with that, as well as we are actually still seeing people in person as well. If people are really feeling like they need to come in and see somebody and talk to somebody, we are open during the week as well for people to come in and reach out.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. And Stacy, I'll move over to you next.
Hi, well, Christine made that super easy for me. I don't have to talk too much about the CMHA supports, but so yeah, I'm Stacy Wadden. I'm with Canadian Mental Health Association, which we call, you'll hear everybody say CMHA. So I've been there for about 10 years, worked as a crisis worker for about 6, and now I'm a addictions and mental health worker. So I work with people that struggle with addictions and acute mental health. You know, like Christine said, we have a lot of frontline support. Also, one of the other things that we do is the walk-in counseling. I also do casual work as well, and I still pick up walk-in shifts. So again, that's another great program that we've been lucky to have United Way support us with as well. So walk-in counseling is also another support that we have. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much. And next we'll go over to the Oxford County Community Health Center. And Sarah, I'll ask you to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. So I'm Sarah Irwin. I'm a registered nurse and I work at the Oxford County Community Health Center. And we've been open for about 11 years now and offer a big variety of services. So primary care, so doctors, nurses, and nurse practitioners, and we primarily service people with chronic disease, addictions, mental health, and those who struggle with poverty. But we also have lots of services that are open to everybody. So we have a dietitian. We have a rapid access addictions medications clinic, primarily for alcohol and opiate use. We have, through the United Way, got a fund for a mobile health outreach bus. And so that has been out in the community recently serving our underhoused and homeless population with outreach as well as primary care. We have physiotherapy for people on social services and the elderly. We have housing workers to help keep people housed or help people find housing if they need it. Outreach workers to help with, we say everything outside of primary care. So forms, ID, system navigation, help you find what you need to find. We also have social workers and therapists, and we do our walk-in on Wednesdays. We have a point of access in Tilsonburg out of the Livingston Center with a counselor and an outreach worker, and also a point of access in Ingersoll, co-housed with the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioner-led clinic that does some of our RAM services as well. So that's a little bit about it.
Thank you. That's a lot. It's a busy organization. Next, I would like to introduce the Ingersoll Nurse-Led Practitioners Clinic. And so, Stephanie, I'm going to start with you, if you may, and then talk a bit about your organization and yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having us tonight. My name is Stephanie Nevins, and I'm the clinic manager at the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioner-led Clinic. Our clinic is a primary care organization that functions with an interdisciplinary team. We have a staffing complement of nurse practitioners, registered practical nurses, chronic disease coordinators, and social workers as well. We serve patients in the community who are not presently connected with a primary care provider. So our role here is to close the gap for individuals who do not have access. And then we also support many different programs within the community as partnerships with some of the other community agencies. Very fortunate to be a partner with the Community Health Center, CMHA, ADS-TV. We offer counseling programs, walk-in counseling at the clinic a couple of days a month, and very excited about our work. My role specifically is just to be mindful of programs and services that are of need to individuals in the community.
Excellent. And Rhonda, you're also with the Ingersoll Nurse-Led Practitioner Clinic. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Oh, okay, that's better?
You're good.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm one of the social workers here at the clinic. There's two of us on staff, and we see the patients for the nurse practitioners to provide counseling and therapy here in the office, as well as we provide addictions counseling and mental health to other people in the community. And we have a partnership with other agencies like CMHA and CHC, as well as ADS-TV for addictions counseling.
Excellent. Yeah. And if I could now move over to the Woodstock Hospital, and Jillian, if you would like to introduce yourself and get started.
Sure. My name is Jill Blair. I'm the outpatient team lead at Woodstock Hospital. We are a Schedule I facility, which means we offer inpatient mental health services as well as outpatient mental health services. Talk a little bit about our outpatient team. We have a team of social workers, rec therapists, and we have a behavioral supports person. And basically, we provide walk-in counseling on Thursday evenings. We are offering that by telephone right now so that we could be more accessible to individuals during the pandemic. We also have adult therapy, youth therapy, specialized services, including eating disorders, first episode psychosis, Behavioral Supports Ontario team, medication clinic, outpatient psychiatry, and a variety of services. We also have crisis in the emergency department 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's always somebody available in our emergency department to speak with. We've also been very fortunate, thanks to donations from the community, and working with the Oxford County Community Health Clinic and United Way to provide an addictions resource in our community and in our ED. And so basically what we've done over the past 3 months is we've worked to create pathways to help people who are looking for addiction support in the emergency department to transition to all of the various community partners that we have in a more smooth and seamless way.
Excellent. And we'll talk a little bit, probably a little bit more about that as the evening goes on. And Alyssa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, it's Alyssa. So I'm the, excuse me, inpatient social worker on L500, the mental health unit. I've been there just a couple years. So my role would be more setting up services for people that are leaving the hospital, helping with a treatment plan, helping set up counseling or, psychiatry appointments, housing, addiction support, during their stay on our unit, and help cover some of the medical floors as well for support.
Excellent. And last but not least, Lucy, if you would just like to quickly introduce yourself. And Lucy is also at the hospital.
Yes, so I'm a child adolescent therapist at the hospital. I've been there going on 19 years in June. And so I just primarily sort of work with the youth in Oxford County. Yeah.
Wonderful. And just for clarity's sake, this evening we're talking about programs and services specific to adults.
Right.
However, with adults come children and family members. And so we knew that there would likely be, some questions or some opportunity to share a bit more specifically. But I also want to let the audience know that we are planning to do a session like this for all that kids could be and talk specifically about programs and services for youth, from mentoring to building self-esteem and resiliency to mental health to other supports. So there will be more coming down the road, but for this evening, we're thrilled to have Lucy here because we know that really we are, as humans, we're very complicated and complex, and nothing sort of happens in a bubble or in isolation. So, even when you heard some of the intros for all of the organizations, these things are all part and parcel of our mental health and our well-being. And it might be housing and homelessness, or addictions, or food security, or job insecurity, and so many of these pieces. So we have a wealth of expertise here, and thank you for joining us this evening. And I'm going to get started with our first question, and we're just going to kind of have some conversation about some of these topics, if you will. And so I'm going to actually gear my first question to CMHA, and then after that, others can jump in if you wish. So we know that this past year has impacted absolutely everyone, but some more than others. And so there are so many aspects of this pandemic that have indeed affected people, from as I was just saying, from financial to social isolation, to family struggles, to homeschooling, to that sandwich generation of worrying about kids and aging parents, to working or not, everything in between. So could you tell us a little bit about what you and your colleagues have been experiencing as people are presenting to your organization and reaching out for help?
Okay, sure. I'll start, and then Christine can jump in whenever. So with crisis, I've had some chats with them kind of about the people that they're hearing from, either face-to-face or over the phone, as well as, we still are seeing people just coming in to speak with crisis. A lot of people are feeling very overwhelmed. So it's been a year now. A lot of people are tired. A lot of people are extremely overwhelmed. We're seeing that the socialization, the lack of socialization and the isolation is really starting to impact people. We're noticing that people that have have less ability to deal with things that may have not have been as overwhelming, let's say a year ago. And that ability to, you know, to deal with a stressful situation seems a lot less lower than before. Depression is definitely on the rise. We're seeing a lot of people that are struggling with really low mood, low motivation, a real sense of hopelessness. And you know, these are not people that, you know, struggle and have a diagnosis of mental health disorder. You know, we have our clients and we have our people that we work with every day, but we are definitely seeing an increase of people that, you know, I want to say don't have I mean, I think one way to put it, I guess, is, you know, these are abnormal experiences that are happening for a lot of people, right, at a really, really hard time. So we're seeing that people are dealing with higher anxiety. You know, the job losses are happening. Parents are struggling with homeschooling. I mean, hello, I think we can all say that homeschooling piece for all of us. I'm seeing everybody smile, right? The homeschooling was very stressful for a lot of us, right? A lot of us had to work from home as well as make sure that our kids were, you know, I found, again, myself, I found that very stressful, wanting to make sure that my child was getting the best education that she could with me as a teacher, and as well as making sure that I was providing the best support I could for my clients. So, you know, we're seeing so much in terms of financial stress as well. A lot of people unfortunately have lost jobs and things like that. But I think the one thing that I really want to put out there is we talk a lot about how, you know, there's more and more people that are struggling with mental health and things like that. And we're talking, I think one of the things, and I don't know if Christine can kind of jump in with this, what we're seeing as well, and I think it's important to really kind of point out to people is, you know, some of us, you know, feel overwhelmed, you know, lack of motivation, feeling really tired, fatigued. I mean, we're spending a lot more time on computers doing Zoom meetings and things like that. We're feeling a lot more tired at the end of the day, that when we're even finished doing work, we don't want to talk to people. We don't want to have those conversations with the people that we usually converse with, because again, it's over the computer or it's over the phone. But the other thing that I'm noticing too is having conversations with people saying, well, I still have a job. I still, you know, have a roof over my head, and I'm not doing so bad. You know, yeah, okay, my depression is, you know, I'm feeling really, really low, and I'm feeling all these ways, but my situation is not as bad. And I think it's really important for people to understand that we can't compare our situation to others. How we feel is how we feel. And it's okay to ask for help. And I think that's something that we all kind of wanted to get out there today, that, you know, these are normal experiences. I'm going to steal from Jill because she said that last week, normal experiences in a really abnormal situation that are happening. So we are all feeling some type of reaction to this pandemic. I mean, we are all feeling fatigued. We're all feeling, you know, some days are harder than others. So I think it's really important for us to, for lack of better words, normalize that and say, you know, it's okay. You know, you can ask for help, you can ask for support, you know, and it's okay to recognize, you know, yeah, okay, I may still, you know, I still have my job, my family is doing okay, I'm fairly healthy, you know, so I'm not gonna, you know, put myself out there and say, you know, I'm struggling, because, you know, they don't want to complain, right? So I think it's important for people to, you know, recognize that it's okay. That it's okay to say, I am struggling, you know, I am struggling with anxiety or low mood or whatever other those symptoms that people are feeling, right? Somebody else want to hop on and
Yeah, definitely. So I think when you're talking, what I was really thinking about as well is, for me at least, I'm seeing kind of this combination of people maybe aren't able to use those same coping strategies that always worked for them. Like a lot of us used to go to the gym a lot or do yoga classes or go like have a coffee with our friends. And these were just the things that got us through the stressful situation. So for a lot of people, they're either new faces to CMHA because they always had their coping strategies, or they're people who were doing really well for a while because they had access to this stuff, but now with a lot of things being taken away, they're now not coping maybe as well as they used to. And another piece I think about as well is like capacity. So I often talk to people about, it's like walking around with a cup of water, and like pre-2020, a lot of us were able to make sure that our cup of water wasn't too full, but now a lot of us are walking around and like we're on the brim, right? Like we're right on that brim of that cup of water. So every time somebody like bumps into us, or there's a little trip, or there's a little hiccup, things are spilling over. And part of that is we don't have access to the coping. And part of it is just like all of us are feeling this kind of drain and stress and pressure. So yeah, just walking around with that full glass can be real tough.
Yeah, I think really what your point's about, there is not a person who hasn't been impacted by all of this. And, it really, our definition of whether we're struggling, it's important that it's ours. So if it's my crisis, it is my crisis. And if it's my struggle, it is my struggle. And it may not be as bad as someone else's, but it is to me. And so we really do want people to know that there are supports and services, and that's why they're here, to reach out.
Well, and I think, Kelly, that's the other thing that's really important too. And I know, to reach out before it gets to the point where it's a quote unquote crisis. We hear a lot of people say, well, I don't want to call because, I didn't have, I wasn't in a crisis. We want to have people come in and see us when they're in a place where they could still learn coping strategies and really kind of start working on that, as opposed to, a month later when they're at a point where they're completely overwhelmed and it's such a bigger situation then, right? So, and I love the fact that you said, we can't define what a crisis is for anyone, right? Because, feeling unwell and not mentally healthy, it's not a way anybody should have to live. And if there's support out there for them, and if there's a way that they can learn some new coping strategies, and let's be honest, we need to be creative right now in how we're dealing with those situations, right? I know that we had a conversation the other day too about there's an increase for seniors, right? In terms of that social isolation, there's certain things that, I know for people that I've worked with, they're very routine in the things that they do. They would have their coffee with their buddies in the morning, and, they might go to the community center or do a thing in the afternoon. And when all of that stuff was gone, what do they do? So that's, I think, one of the things we really need to talk about too, about being creative. And luckily the weather's starting to get better, except for the freezing that we're getting tonight. But, being creative and how we can kind of help boost those moods a little bit and help people not feel so isolated anymore.
Absolutely. Even, even the sunshine, like to know that spring is coming, you can feel that warmth. That does not solve all the problems, but it does give some hope, right? That is, things are going to get better. So on that isolation theme, we know that isolation from loved ones has been a major concern across the board. So in particular for people that might live on their own, or in long-term care facilities. We're also very distant from families. If we have families across the province or across the country, many haven't seen their loved ones for a very, very long time. And not everyone's connected virtually. And I think that that's one of the learnings of this entire pandemic. We've got online, we do a lot of Zoom, we have like web kind of meetings, and that's fantastic for some. But A, not everyone, A, has a computer, or B, has internet or stable internet. And you'll notice I was just kicked off a moment ago, or even knows how to use a computer, right? So isolation is a big thing for virtually everyone, and the winter made it worse. But would anyone like to jump in with maybe some things that we can all do to try and help combat some of that social isolation that's been really draining for everyone?
Can I take an opportunity to really piggyback off of what Stacey was saying about creativity? The things that I have noticed during this pandemic in providing care, even in a large organization like a hospital, is that our community and our families are really getting creative in how they're reaching out to their loved ones. We had a period of time where we weren't able to have visitors in hospital. And it was wonderful to see people create signs, do parades, organize those sorts of things from outside, just to say, hey, I'm here. And I think the thing is that we need to recognize is, instead of talking about how this has been a challenge for people who are experiencing an increase in symptoms of mental illness, it's been a universal challenge for everybody's mental well-being and mental health, right? So I think any opportunity that we can see, it always doesn't have to be tech related. Small gestures are making a big difference in people who are receiving care at the hospital. And even from somebody being willing to reach out and say, hey, I can help you with an iPad. I can show you how to use FaceTime so that you can speak with someone. Or I'll stand with you at the window because I've coordinated a parade with your entire family outside. Look, they're all there rooting you on. I've seen people have conversations through the windows of long-term care facilities. It's about seeing the challenge to our mental health, seeing the challenge to our mental well-being, and saying, hey, I have ideas and ways of reaching out to the people I love and to my community to take care of each other. And I've seen a lot of that in hospital. It's been lovely.
You know, I would actually echo that we've seen a lot of that in the community overall, not just limited into the conversation here this evening, but everything from people and volunteers helping with grocery deliveries to seniors that can't get out, or phone chains, or all kinds of things, you know, little care packages that are being delivered. It really, you know, it brings out the best in community when people truly need help. It's nice to know that the community is there and people are there to try and offer some support. So another question I have is really about sort of within the workforce. I guess I have two really. But this has certainly been a challenging year for everyone in the workforce, both employees and employers. And for those that have been working on the front lines since the very beginning, there has been a tremendous amount of stress and uncertainty. And I think we've heard a lot about first responders and the incredible stresses and pressures from the healthcare sector in particular, nurses, doctors, support staff, you know, staff in long-term care homes, all of that. But I think we often forget that also front and center in all of this have been people in the service industry. So grocery store clerks, gas station attendants, taxi drivers, all kinds of people have been out there from the get-go. And it's been a long year, and there's been so many unknown pieces to all of that. Christine, would you maybe like to speak a little bit about the frontline support program that the CMHA is offering, and how that might be really valuable to a lot of people who might not know about it yet?
Absolutely. And so I love your point, Kelly, about how many people are included in that umbrella of frontline. That, again, like some people think that it's more restricted to first responders, and although we have some like first responders and medical people who partake in the program, there's any type of person who is working, feeling stressed about COVID, you know, they have that stress every day that they're going into work, a lot of that uncertainty. That's what the program is all about. So really it is kind of a 4-session model that we're looking at. Really, part of it is some of that counseling, but also part of it is a lot of skill building and just helping people kind of build up, again, those coping skills and strategies that maybe they're not able to access some of their regular stuff, like I was just talking about, that we can add in extra skills and add in extra ways of coping and managing, so that people feel just hopefully a little bit less stressed when they're going into work, and able to leave work at work is a big thing that we're seeing as well, because COVID is affecting every aspect of our lives. There's a lot of people that are having a hard time separating work from home and dealing with that balance. So it is definitely a great program that we've worked with a lot of frontline people, and just trying to, build up those skills, a lot of mindfulness, DBT skills, lots of cool stuff incorporated in the program to help people out. It can be done phone, virtual, in person, whatever is really the best option for the individual.
Excellent. And that's free of charge.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's really important to note too, that you know, these programs are available for anyone and everyone, and you don't have to worry about your financial situation being able to make that make that work.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can just call right into CMHA, give us your name and phone number, and someone like me will give you a shout and we'll get working.
And so maybe someone else, you know, keeping on the theme of working from home now, before we move on, maybe someone else would like to jump in that, you know, that separating home from work is a bit of a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And the stresses are different. Zoom fatigue, certainly, I think for those that have been working from home, this has certainly been an issue, but as have homeschooling that we heard about. And, you know, I can only tell you from my experience, both with my team and my friends and people I see on Zoom meetings all of the time, people are really seem to be feeling kind of done. They're just, you know, as you've said in the beginning, they're tired. They're just not sort of at the same level of concentration that they were. And, you know, I look back when we first started working from home from our team, people were working like they were workhorses. It was unbelievable how hard they were working and how much they were accomplishing, because there was such pressure to try and just make it all work and do well for the community. But that pace is not manageable forever. And so I know that sort of concentration, that productivity is maybe not what it was. And there's some stresses. So would anyone like to jump in with some suggestions or some ideas for people that are really feeling a bit overwhelmed working from home right now?
I can add to that. I think, Kelly, what you said is really good about recognizing what we can sustain. And at that level, I agree. In the beginning, we were pushing ourselves really hard, and we really had no idea what was going to be coming about. And it was scary, and there was a lot of uncertainty. One thing that I talk with people about often is having compassion for themselves and recognizing their own limitations and being kind to themselves, because we are usually our worst critic and we have such high expectations on ourselves, and we end up putting that on ourselves, that we have to be able to sustain that level and that we have to be perfect in all levels, trying to parent and trying to work and then trying to keep up with the house and paying the bills and be supportive and caring for your parents as well as caring for your children. And we're all human. It's not possible. So I think, one, being compassionate with ourselves, compassionate with each other, talking with other people about what we need. For managers and leadership to be supportive of staff, I think is huge. I think that is really, really powerful for people, because then it allows you to be more compassionate with yourself. So I think those points there for everyone is being more compassionate with themselves, more gentle.
Rhonda, I love what you said, because, you know, we see so much about be kind, and we always interpret it and see it as be kind to others, show compassion, show empathy, show kind, really be civil and kind to the community around you. But you forget that we do have to look after ourselves as well. And I think that many will forget that being kind to ourselves needs to be a priority sometimes too, especially 13 months now almost into really an incredibly difficult time. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to chime in on that one? Okay, so I'm going to move to grief a little bit. And the world has experienced so much loss this year. And the pandemic has taught us to do without so many things, so many areas of our lives. And it has taken away cherished opportunities, cherished events, and family rituals and experiences. And it has even taken away loved ones from us. And so this is all grief, really. This is loss. And I'm going to start with Christine, and then others can chime in. But can you speak to a little bit about managing grief and its impact, maybe on the community and certainly on an individual, and what we can do to cope with grief, especially if that's in particular what our challenges might be, or where there are programs and supports to help grief. And grief can kind of rear its ugly head in, not necessarily at the immediate time, but down the road as well, correct?
Absolutely. And it's such a good point, Kelly, that there is so much grief and loss that we're all experiencing because of the pandemic. Some of our young people, this is their first ever experience with grief and loss, is like literally losing out on team sports, like things like that. So many of us are experiencing loss. And one of the big things that we talk about within the grief world is that loss triggers loss. So for some people, they're experiencing these grief reactions that they haven't had to deal with for years, and things are coming up again, and really having a hard time with it. So I think a couple things to really help with experiencing grief and loss, first and foremost, is having your grief witnessed is hugely important. So whether that is just sharing with a family member, a trusted person that you have in your life, or reaching out to some of the professional supports that we have on here, really just having somebody to witness that grief. Again, going back to original points of no self-judgment, right? No loss is too small to be able to come in and have somebody witness that grief with you. I think a big thing as well is going back to, again, Jill's point of that like creativity when we're talking about those ceremonies and family times that we're missing out on. I think it's still important to find ways to honor our losses, honor our major events, getting really creative with that. It might not look like those 100, 200 person events anymore, but these things are still really important to our communities, to our cultures, to our well-being, to still be able to participate in that. But yeah, I think we really kind of, again, have to just lessen the self-judgment, build up that self-compassion that Rhonda was talking about, being mindful, again, that grief does trigger grief. So like you said, Kelly, like it's for some people, they're like, I don't understand, like this happened years ago. I don't know why this is coming up. That is absolutely normal to have these grief waves coming back right now, because we're all living in this world of grief and loss. So definitely don't be hard on yourself, reach out, find ways to have that grief witnessed, and find your own kind of creative ways to honor that loss for yourself.
I want to jump in on that one too, because what I've learned throughout my years working with people in this community and throughout life really is that emotions don't wait well. They just don't. And if you make them wait, they build up and then they're there. And so moving back a year ago, I saw our walk-in numbers drop. I saw people make decisions to stop coming into counseling because they wanted to make sure that they were physically safe, that they weren't at risk of becoming sick by coming in and accessing service. And over time, it couldn't wait anymore. And our numbers started to creep up, because the reality is that you can't cope alone and emotions don't wait well. So we got creative by offering services, and the entire community has done a wonderful job of offering services in unique ways to make sure that you don't have to come in if you don't feel safe coming in, but we are still here, and it is still important that you're accessing the support that you need, even if it is just somebody to be a witness, because you want to have a safe or unbiased person to speak to about your experiences. So even the smallest thing, like losing out on a team sport, for some people, that's their entire lives. That's their purpose. And so having someone to speak to about those losses, or having someone to say, yeah, the entire world's struggling with a pandemic right now. That's not my thing. This is actually my thing. That's okay, because that's the emotion, and that's what needs the support in the moment.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important to, and I know you all kind of talked about this initially in the introductions, but to speak about the walk-in counseling programs across the county, right? So obviously there's opportunity at the Woodstock Hospital to seek walk-in support, opportunity in Ingersoll through CMHA and through the Ingersoll NurseLed Practitioner Clinic. We have the Oxford County Community Health Center in Woodstock and offering supports in Tillsonburg. Like, these are really important because they are easy access points for folks. And we know that transportation in our county is always a challenge. And this has certainly not made that any easier. And so while it may not be in every small community, it is close to home for a lot of folks, so that if people do feel they just need to maybe talk to someone, maybe someone once or twice, that option is available. Would anyone maybe like to speak a little bit about the walk-in counseling and how it's available for anyone and everyone?
I just wanted to Kelly, just add about the grief and feeling grief. I think one thing as well just to think about is how grief presents itself in so many different ways for different people. Often people associate grief with sadness because that is a common way that people show they're grieving, but that it does present itself in so many other ways. You know, it could be denial, it could be pain or feeling guilt. But also, especially with the current times, people could be feeling grief in a very physical way, feeling unwell, and having sickness presented. And that is also a form of grief as well that we should recognize.
Well, that's really important. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Absolutely. Anyone else like to chime in?
Maybe just say that in primary care, what we're seeing is a lot of fear. So people are coming in, they're really afraid. They're afraid for themselves. They're afraid that their personal, like their health conditions are going to contribute to them getting very sick if they were to get COVID. They're afraid for their family members. And so the actual fear of COVID has caused a lot of people to come and seek help for us, not only through mental health services, but also through primary care. I do a lot of reassurance and a lot of like, you know, we'll just check and make sure everything's okay. Yep, I think, you know, we're good today. And then we check back in again.
Mm-hmm. Which, thank you very much, Chair, because it really does validate how important it is to check in, right? To check in with your healthcare provider, to check in with somebody, because it, you know, again, to try and get that support earlier and not leave it till you really hit a tipping point. So here's a question, and I think maybe the hospital and Stacy might, somebody from the hospital and Stacy might want to chime in on this, but you know, I think it's really an important piece, and as we were preparing for this, it became even more important in my mind in listening to some of you speak, and from lots of, you know, experience. But over the last, especially the last while, we have seen so many funny little Facebook memes or Facebook little things about parents trying to cope, often targeted at mothers and wine, but not limited to mothers and wine. And it's always about, you know, more wine and have fun and a bottle is not a glass and, you know, all of these things. And they're meant to be funny, but perhaps they're actually really not. And for some, alcohol has certainly become an unhealthy coping mechanism. So something that was perhaps for people just a social enjoyment thing has now gone a little too far, and it might be an unhealthy coping mechanism. And so can you help us understand about how we would know if maybe this is a problem, if it maybe is become something that is more of a necessity than a treat, if you will, and then what should we do about it if we actually think it is a problem?
Okay, so I think just to kind of piggyback a little bit, I know that, you know, we're talking about, you know, we see those funny memes, right? You know, it's, you know, talking about, we see the ones where they say the teacher, you know, the kids are in the driveway saying, you know, my teacher is not a very good teacher because she's drunk. And then somebody says, don't be that mean about mom, right? So you're seeing all these different Facebook things. So one of the things I think that's really important before we talk about even bringing the alcohol in is about, you know, talking about when do you feel like it's time that, you know, I may need to reach out for support with walk-in counseling, and, you know, how do I recognize that I may not be coping as well, right? And when do I reach out? One of the things I think that's really important, Kelly, if you don't mind, before I kind of get into the, one of the things I think that's wonderful about all of us here that are working here and other community partners, we have this idea now of no wrong door. And I think it's really important that we bring that up, right? Through walk-in counseling, through, you know, entering, whether it's nurse practitioners, going to the hospital, coming to CMHA, through walk-in counseling and through other programs, that, for example, if somebody comes in to see us at CMHA and we think that they're a better fit somewhere else, we don't just hand them a business card and say, go see these people at this date and this time. We make sure that that person gets where they need to be to get the best supports that they need. And I think that's one of the great things about our community collaborations now, is that we're able, and this was before COVID, but we're seeing a lot more now, making sure that people get where they need to be, you know. So I don't want people to worry about, well, you know, I don't have, you know, this, so I might not be a good fit at nurse practitioners, or I might not be a good fit at the hospital. Go wherever you can access service through walk-in counseling, through the crisis team at the ED, through our crisis team, you know, whatever the service may be, right? As Sarah at the community health center, if she sees that someone's struggling, then she'll make sure that they get where they need to be. So I think that's the really important piece. If anything gets taken away today, that's one of the things that's really important, that, you know, not to worry about that you're going to the right place. Because if you're not, you know, in the place that can best support you, we will make sure that you get there. We're not just going to hand you a piece of paper with a phone number. We're going to make sure that you get there. So I just wanted to, before we kind of forgot to talk about that. So
I'm so glad you did, because I think that really is such an important piece, because here's the reality, and we have some things posted in the chat box, and there's links and there's phone numbers and there's all kinds of wonderful programs and services, and we know that, but you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And until the day you need it, it doesn't matter how often you advertise or what you do, people don't even necessarily
They really
see
don't.
it,
And I think
right?
that's, yeah.
And so this no wrong door means that if I woke up today and decided I think I need help, and I don't even maybe know what kind of help I need, I just have to reach out to somebody, and then your professional hands will guide me to where I am best.
Absolutely. And I think that's the most important piece, because I mean, and that's the other thing. So if we talk about, you know, sometimes people are like, you know, I don't even know if I need help. I don't know kind of where that's going to look. When you're, you know, when your mental health well-being is, when you're, for example, if you're feeling low, if your mood is really low, if your motivation, if it starts to impact your daily living, if, you know, it's impacting whether or not, you know, you go and do something with your child because you just feel like laying in bed, if, you know, you're calling in sick to work a lot, if it, you know, the thing where people are like, well, I don't know, you know, is it really, really that bad? I hate to use that word. Maybe that's kind of an indicator that I might need a little bit extra help to kind of support. So that's kind of a little bit of, like we talked before, though, it's really hard to kind of describe or put that parameter of what, you know, a crisis is for anyone. But if you start to see that it's impacting your, what we call activities of daily living, then that's when you really kind of see that there might, you know, need a little bit extra assistance, rather than just using your coping strategies and new things that you can be creative with. Now, when we talk about alcohol, as a little bit of a segue, what we're seeing a lot of, especially for myself, you know, there's a lot of people out there who drink socially. You know, they have a glass of wine when they get home from work, or they open up a beer when they get home from work and have a beer in the evening and stuff. What we're seeing is that, you know, one glass of wine has now become a bottle, or, you know, the 1 or 2 beers has become a 6-pack, and things like that. And rather than it being once or twice a week, it could be 5 or 6 nights a week. So just really want to caution people, because it is, you know, we're not saying that you're, you know, you have an addiction or anything like that, but it is right now, we're seeing that as a negative coping strategy. You know, people are getting home, they're done, they want to numb out, they don't want to think about it anymore, and not even realizing. And that's the other piece of it. People aren't sitting there going, I'm going to drink until I numb out. They have their one drink and then just realizing it's really helping them relax and just continue on. So it's not an intentional thing that people are doing right now, but increasing that awareness that, you know what, maybe, you know, I'm having a lot more wine now than I used to, right? And kind of thinking about, well, why is that? Is it because I want to numb out? Is it because I'm just stressed and done and over it? And by, you know, having a full bottle, it just makes me feel better. So be mindful of that. And we are seeing a lot more people that are coming and saying, oh my gosh, you know, all of a sudden one day I realized, like, I'm drinking a bottle a night. When I had to go bring my empties back, I had so many bottles compared to what I normally do. So just be mindful of, if you're someone who, you know, used to have social and you tend to find that you're drinking a lot more. Doesn't make you a bad person. It just right now is a negative coping strategy that people are using. And I believe they said that it's like up 300%, you know, alcohol sales, things like that through COVID. So just be mindful of that. It's really important. And just kind of in the manner as well, instead of using it as a social thing, people are drinking by themselves, right? Not having a glass of wine, but again, having more than they normally do by themselves, right? So just, you know, be mindful, you know, kind of take stock a little bit now and then of maybe how much, if you notice that you're drinking a lot more. And, you know, and again, check in with anyone within the community. And if it's something that you feel you need some support with, again, we've got walk-in counseling, we've got all the other great programs throughout the community, you know, to kind of help support. And again, no wrong door. So wherever you need to go to kind of get that support, by all means, we're all here and available to help as best we can. So.
And I have to think that a lot of people just perhaps have not even recognized this until right here and now. Because I know it was really quite striking for me when we were having our pre-conversation. And we all, whether it was the Ingersoll nurse practitioner-led clinic, whether it was the hospital, everyone was talking about alcohol and the increase in people's usage. And then the health implications that kind of go from there. Would anyone else, does anyone have anything else they'd like to say on that particular topic?
Yeah, I really want to take a minute to, again, express my gratitude for the recognition of how stressful situations and managing the pandemic has really brought to light an increase in alcohol use. It's a reality that our community was able to really come together around, and the ability to work with CMHA and with the Oxford County Community Health Clinic and the RAM Clinic to say, hey, this is what we're seeing. And so let's provide some additional support through the ED Addictions Resource Person to help people get the support that they need. Because I think in reality is what's happening is we are impacted by the experience of our loved ones. So we see an increase in alcohol use. We see an increase in youth accessing crisis services at the hospital. And the reality is that when people need help, it affects the entire family system, the entire community system. And to be able to really look at it realistically, say, hey, we have a heightened need, let's create a service and let's provide that service. I really want to say thank you for the support of the community partners to do that.
Jillian, that's a great segue to my next question, because we've talked a little bit about how we might recognize within ourselves if we're in a position or a place where we might need a little bit of support, and how to do that. And the no wrong door, I think, is just so fantastic, because again, people just don't necessarily know where to go, whether it's their family doctor to start, or, you know, some have an EAP plan, but not everyone. And so there's all kinds of parameters there. But I think it's also important that as a member of a family or a friend, we might be sitting and thinking that someone we care deeply about, a family member or loved ones, or even coworkers who we also often care very deeply about, might not be doing all that well. And so if we're sitting here listening this evening and starting to think, wow, maybe someone that matters a great deal to me, you know, now I'm starting to worry that they might not be doing that well. Does anyone have any advice on what you could do, or what you should do if there's an opportunity?
It's just about checking in. You know, it's about asking that question. You know, coming forward to somebody and saying, are you okay? And to even sometimes say, I've noticed, you don't smile as much as you used to, or, by giving a couple of examples, you can say, I've noticed that, we don't check in like we used to, or, we don't talk on the phone like we used to, or whatever that you can, by even just saying that telling someone that you care, that's showing compassion. And, sometimes that's all that person needs, because I think right now people feel alone, even when they're in a house full of their family with their kids. At the end of the day, people are tired, and I think some people are fearful and saying, I'm just done, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not sleeping, my anxiety is high, whatever emotions and things that they're feeling, feel alone. Where if you get that validation and say, I've noticed that you look like you're struggling, I am too, what can I do to help? Right? And I think by validating, even though that we're all in this together, we hear that all the time. I think internally people are still feeling that, they don't have a right to feel that way, because, their life is not that bad, or, there's fear. There's a lot of stigma around mental health, right? There's a lot of stigma around accessing support and accessing help, right? So if somebody can come to you and say, hey, Kelly, I've noticed that, you just kind of seem like you're struggling a little bit. Would you like me to? I can, go to CMHA with you. Would you like me to help you make a phone call to, to our walk-in counseling and book an appointment? Do you want to go to the emergency department at the hospital, the Ingersoll? So by just even offering that, but I think honestly, the first step, if you really are concerned for someone, just saying, hey, are you okay? You'd be amazed at the responses you'll get if you come to somebody with, authentic concern and compassion. I think sometimes the response that people get, sometimes I think they're surprised. And I think some people are actually surprised when people come at them that way, because I think a lot of times when you're really struggling, you really do feel alone.
And we're not finished yet, but there's so many valuable takeaways from each of you this evening. This is just, I know, going to make such a difference for folks that are both on the line now and watching, but who will be able to see the recording of this afterwards, because you just don't know when people will tune in. Sorry, Rhonda, go ahead.
Sorry, can I just add something? I think what Stacy said is excellent. I also want to just add, sometimes mental health doesn't actually look like mental health. Sometimes people aren't saying I'm depressed or I'm sad. This is what I'm feeling. Sometimes people don't even realize what they're experiencing. They can't articulate it, or they've never experienced it before. I have had a number of people come in for referrals to me who came in because they thought that something was wrong with their blood work, or that they were having trouble sleeping, or stomach issues. So it's really important to recognize that a lot of times mental health issues can come out in physical symptoms. And so you might have a friend who's not sleeping well, or they're having stomach problems, or they're sick, or, it looks like headaches or migraines or something like that. And then underneath it is the anxiety and the sadness. Also anger. Children come out in anger. Men come out in anger. We think that the issue is the anger, but it's actually what's underneath the anger is the anxiety, the depression, the sadness, the isolation. Like there's so many things that people aren't necessarily able to articulate or even to recognize. And I'm seeing often for people, they've never experienced this before. So because they've never experienced this, they don't know how to cope. They don't know how to ask for help. They don't know what to say. And there's, like Stacy said, unfortunately, there is a stigma there too, especially for seniors who are hard, they struggle with identifying what they're feeling and asking for help. Like there's shame with it. So I think talking about it is wonderful, because that's going to help for people to reach out to say, hey, I am having trouble sleeping. I am having trouble with my stomach. Something's wrong with me. I'm not feeling great. And I didn't realize it's because I'm not seeing my family, or that I'm not getting out, and that, I'm having trouble sleeping because of the way that I'm feeling with my mental health. People don't recognize it necessarily.
I was going to say the same thing. The irritation, agitation, and lack of patience is something that we're seeing a lot of too, right? Like just that inability to really just kind of deal with, I don't want to say everyday problems, but the ability to deal with situations that look very different. But I love that, Rhonda, because I find it really interesting. We're seeing a lot of males. struggling with that agitation and anger, you know, and once you peel away, you're realizing that it actually is depression, that people are really struggling with depression, right? And to be able to put a name on that, actually, believe it or not, does make people feel better too, knowing that they're not, you know, going crazy. They hate, you know, they don't, that's how they feel, right? Especially like Rhonda said, for people that have never experienced this before, right? And that stigma, well, you know, I don't want to walk through the front door, right? And I mean, we always try to say to people when they come through the front door, it's always the hardest thing sometimes, because they don't want to be seen walking through the building. With CMHA, used to have a big CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association. I don't know if people have noticed, that's gone off the front of the building now. It's just a small little plaque off to the side of the door now, to kind of help with that feeling of stigma walking through that front door. And that is always one of our biggest enemies, right, is the stigma around mental health, and what people have a specific idea of what those stereotypes look like. And we work every day to help, you know, get that, you know, notice that, you know, we all struggle in our own way, right? So I think that's really important takeaway today for sure.
Sorry, go ahead, Christine.
I just wanted to like go back to what Stacy was talking about how we're approaching people, because I think some of the examples that she was giving were very lovely, because not only are we figuring out how we're approaching, but it's what can I do for you? Do you want to do this? Do you want to go here? So you can provide information on resources. Like we now have presented all these great resources. There's tons in the chat, but I think it's really important when we're looking at helping others. So many of us, when it's somebody that we're close to, that we care about, we want to jump in and fix the problem for them and tell them, oh man, I've got this great resource for you. Like you need to go to CMHA and everything will be better. But it's really important when we're having those conversations that it's, here are the reasons that exist. Where do you feel more comfortable going? What do you think the next step should be? And like we keep talking about that no wrong door, it is really up to the individual for what's going to be helpful for them and where they want to go. So I just really wanted to highlight that at the end of the day, we want what's best for the people in our lives, but we really have to make sure that they are still in control of their lives and their well-being.
And you know, I think that the reason that we wanted to host this event tonight is recognizing the increasing need of individuals who just need some support, whatever that type of support might be. And so we wanted to share what the resources and the services were available, because again, you don't know what you don't know, and this is a great way of sharing that. But the other piece that I think is so critical, and many of you have talked about this, is trying to help reduce stigma, because and stigma has changed a lot through the years. We know that, we've seen it decrease, but it certainly is still there. And it shouldn't be, because frankly, if you have a brain, which everyone does, then there's a chance that you're going to have some issue at some point in your life with your mental health and well-being. And so, you know, if you broke your leg, you wouldn't hesitate to go to the hospital to get it fixed. And so if you need support, we really want to make that this is a normal thing. We all need it. Everyone does at some point, at some time. And so what is that? And what could it be? I have a quick question to Jillian from the chat. I think it was Jillian in particular. And you were talking about the increase in what you're seeing in alcohol problems at the hospital. And someone asked whether or not that there's any correlation to the closure, presumably, of like AA or support programs, especially over those first number of months, and of course the wave of what is and isn't open. And so is there a connection there, or are these often individuals who have not actually even had a problem in the past and now are starting to kind of be a bit worried about their alcohol use?
Is it okay?
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it okay if I pass this one over to Alyssa, because she's working with that.
Yeah, I was nodding because, yeah, we definitely have seen an increase of both. people that maybe were, like Stacy had mentioned, socially drinking before, and variety of reasons, you know, they've lost their job or their whole routine has been in upheaval, and substance use has increased. But definitely seeing an increase in people that were receiving some services through AA, and some of those I think went virtually. And there were some people saying, you know, they didn't like that. They were used to going to their meetings. So lots of relapses, I would say, over the pandemic. Not being able to access detox programs has been hard, because I think they had a lot of protocols around how many people they were admitting, and they saw an increase too. So that was another difficulty, I would say. And just, yeah, some services not kind of going into homes anymore, and that. So we saw a lot of people seeking help from the hospital because they didn't have their normal support mechanisms in the community. Yeah.
I'll echo that too through the RAM. Lots of people feeling the loss of the AA programs, or not feeling comfortable with the online version, wanting it in person, and lots of searches going on for some in-person stuff, which is, I mean, super hard to come by right now. So yeah, we see them in the clinic for that as well.
Well, and you have to remember too, right, for a lot of people, I mean, AA, luckily, thank goodness, is back doing their community meetings and stuff like that. But the other thing to remember too is we always talk in addictions about, you know, I'm talking about people who already have use and have been sober and in recovery for a long time. Our numbers of relapses have gone off the charts. Boredom is one of the worst things for people that struggle with addictions, right? So when this isolation, and then when we were in total lockdown, again, everybody's regular, like Christine talked about earlier, the regular coping strategies that people have had are gone. Some people were attending AA 2 and 3 times a week and have been for years. That is how they are able to stay strong in their recovery, right? So when that is gone, you know, and again, people don't have access to the online stuff. So I think it's really important, again, when Jill talked about being creative, it's something that really, and unfortunately, the major lockdown happened over the winter. So, you know, giving people those ideas of going for a walk, or, you know, going and feeding the ducks, or anything kind of outside in the community was much more difficult, right? And that's where the creativity, but it has been extremely hard for people that have already been in recovery and haven't had access to their regular. So luckily, a lot of that stuff is coming back, you know, with a lot of policies and procedures, less numbers, you know, there's a lot of things you have to do to be able to get in, but they are there and they're opening, and we're seeing more and more open every week. So luckily, thankfully, that has happened, because like I said, boredom is kind of the arch nemesis of sobriety, right? So luckily, we're seeing the weather get nicer, and we can get people out more. So I think the weather and the sunshine is going to be great for everybody. It is. I mean, that. Exactly. And so I'm just forgetting that it's going to be really cold tonight, and we'll go from there.
Spring is coming, and we deserve an early spring. I think we're going to get it. Not that I'm going to go into the weather business, because it's you know, a little iffy. We have a question in the chat box, and it's actually a brilliant question regarding isolation. So I don't know if you have all noticed this, but about a week or so ago, Canada Post distributed postcards to all of the residences across presumably the country, and they're postcards. And so the intent is to write a little note and send it off to somebody. And so the question is, so written communications are a very effective way of connecting with others. And when we write them and we send it to someone, we send it with the intent of making someone feel good, right? A nice little touch base. But how does that, you know, how does that reflect back on the author, on the person writing the postcard? And is there, a good feel-good piece there that's really important to share as well? And does this old-fashioned way of communicating, which is not an iPad and not Zoom and, you know, the old snail mail, but for some folks, it's still a really important method. And so does anyone want to just kind of speak about how powerful that could be?
I gotta take that one, because off the top of my head, I can't remember for sure but thank you to Hickson Public School, because they took those postcards and they sent some to some of our healthcare workers throughout the hospital. So different departments got postcards from, I think it was Hickson Public School. So thank you for that. And I think that when we do things to connect with others, to support other people, we're also connecting here, right? And so that connection fosters our own mental health and well-being. Even though we feel like we're doing something that's nice for someone else, we're also getting that input and we're filling our own bucket, as they say in school. So thank you. I think it was Hickson Public School. We really appreciated it. It made me smile. But the isolation, a big buster to the isolation, I think, is reaching out, right? And connecting. So whatever way you can do that, it doesn't matter. Just connect, right? It doesn't have
a wonderful way to model wonderful, caring concern to students. Like,
yeah, then to give me a postcard and make me feel better. Thank you, students. That was great.
There was a similar thing. Did you see the article on Hard FM? My daughter's class did the same thing, and one of the students wrote a letter to a police officer, and they searched her out and found her, and then brought her into the police station and let her have a ride in the car. And anyway, they were super touched by it as well. And then every kid in the class is excited by the fame of their little classmate there. So yes, I agree, Jill.
When you think about it though, how lovely is it? And then when I don't think anybody has ever opened their mailbox, went through all the bills, and then saw a postcard, went through all the postcards or went through all the bills and then saw either a postcard or a handwritten card or letter from somebody and didn't smile and it didn't lift your spirits, right? So I think by getting them, it makes people feel better, but by you being intentional to sit down and think about what you want to say to somebody and let them know, hey, I'm here, hey, how are things going? I mean, I've gotten more mail probably in the last year than I have in many, many years, right? And it's almost something that we're starting to pick up again because it's taking us away from the computers and from the phones and all that stuff, right? So that's something that we're actively doing in our family now, is kind of starting to write letters and things like that again, right? So I think it's awesome. And I dare anybody to get a letter or a postcard, like specifically to them, and not smile when they see it, right? I think it's a wonderful thing. And then yes, it is old school, it's making me feel old thinking that, but I think it's wonderful. I think it's fantastic.
So we can put the challenge out there to anyone who's listening to this particular show to make sure that you use that postcard and send it somewhere. And you know what? You can really, for the cost of a stamp, you can send many more. You can write a little note and tuck it into a card and send it to others. And that's a lovely call to action that will feed your soul and make you feel good, but also really impact positively whoever is going to be the recipient of your love. We talk about our showing local love. That's a great way to show local love. Mm-hmm.
And I haven't said much because it didn't seem like a lot is applied to child and adolescents. So not that I don't have lots to say, I do, but it didn't seem to my gamut. So I've just kept. So what I did want to say really quickly is a really shout out to Oxford County, all the support we got at the hospital in the first wave back in March. And we were super, super appreciated by many people in Oxford County. Like we got flowers and chocolates. I've never come home with so many tulips and so many different things. So it was just really nice to see that. So I know there's resiliency. So, I come from a child and adolescent perspective, right? So I start at the beginning of the, lifespan. And so I talk a lot about resiliency, and that was awesome to see. Like the building in front of the hospital, I don't know what that building is called, but it's the big apartment building there. It was really nice. We'd come out on Thursday night and there would be people outside, like just clapping for every single healthcare worker working out of the hospital. So, and I know that we have to remember that, right? That we are super resilient and recognize that in our history, we've never experienced anything like this. So it's nice from that perspective as healthcare workers or frontline workers to have that feedback from our community to appreciate the work. And then we appreciate by offering our doors. Yes, you're right. No door is the wrong door, even if it is your neighbor's door, and knocking on your neighbor's door and say, I need something, I need help, I can't cope. you know, can you take my children for a little bit? That is also a door. I mean, we're talking about professional doors, but I would encourage that you look at your community doors, you know, at the people around you, neighbors that you know, enjoy, family members. Those are doors too. Like, we're not the only doors. They are also doors that you can knock on. If you're not comfortable coming to the hospital or CMHA, or, you know, because of stigma, if you like to use that word, like, look around. There's people around all the time that'll help you, and they'll talk to you, no problem. Yeah, so that's the other doors I want people to keep in mind. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucy. And I just want to say, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but Lucy was kind enough to join us tonight because we did think that there was certainly a chance that that a parent would bring up questions about their concern, perhaps about their children or their youth. And so, of course, we want parents to be well, to be able to care for their kids. But if it came up, we wanted to have, to be able to sort of offer some assistance and support. But we are, as I mentioned, going to be, this is our next topic. It is all going to be about children and youth, and what opportunities are to again, build resiliency and self-esteem and mentoring and all of the creative, amazing ways organizations and volunteers have adapted to serve kids and youth in our community. And so we will ask Lucy if she will join us when we schedule that next one to be very specific on children and youth and what those opportunities are. So I have another question here. How are frontline how are you as our frontline workers supporting our mental health doing? How are you and your coworkers doing? And thank you so much for all that you do to support the rest of us in the community. And here to that question, but would anyone like to just take a moment and speak sort of personally about how you're coping?
I think a lot of us, like, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it's waves, right? Like, everybody, we've talked about, everybody copes differently, and there's some days like today when the sun is shining and you can sit outside for a few minutes and have a lovely iced coffee, then it's a great day. There's other days that are a bit harder. Of course, right? We're trying to fill a big need right now in our community, and there is a big need, and we keep showing up. But I think for myself personally, having that purpose has really helped me get through the pandemic, of knowing that I need to keep showing up for my people and keep showing up for my community, and having that reason and purpose to get up in the morning and either go to the office or turn on my work laptop. That's really what helps keep going.
And I think, yeah, just to kind of jump on that a little bit. So for myself, I still tend to, with the population I work with, a lot of people are homeless without telephones and stuff. So except for that one kind of section where we were in total lockdown, I need to go to the office. I was working from home for a lot, and I really found that boundary got really, really muddy for a long time, because my office is also, I do other things personally in here. So being able to have boundaries kind of what my work day, you know, I actually physically close my laptop when I work from home now, and I take it and put it in my work bag and put my work bag away. So just really kind of having those boundaries. I'm actually learning a lot about some of the trails. I'm from the East Coast. I'm not from Ontario. I don't know a lot of the trails and things like that. So I'm actually starting to learn about the trails and stuff in the community and getting out a little bit more. And I'm planning on getting a bicycle, which I haven't had in probably like 35 years. So you know what you have to remember too, there's some positive things that have come out of this as well. I think a lot of us, I know for myself, I really kind of stepped back and really kind of looked at what's important. And you know, are there things that are keeping my life super busy? And I mean, not just physically, but in our heads. We all can tend to be really busy in our heads, right? So really kind of learning how to put some of that stuff away too, and really kind of focusing on, you know, again, it's the putting the letters in the mailboxes, and it's just those little things that we can do to make ourselves feel better, I think is most important. But yeah, I'm learning to kind of really not I don't sweat the small stuff as much as I used to, right? But again, like Christine said, really trying to, you know, the need of the community right now. So having that ability to really support my people as much as I want to, and I love my job, but being able to take care of myself at the end of the day too is really important. And we do tend to do it in waves sometimes where, you know, finally you have to say, okay, you know, I have to stop and I have to take care of me, right? So, you know, being able to have that balance is really important.
It's a perfect segue to my very final question as we wrap up. And that was, because I really wanted to end on a positive note, that there are things that there's help available, we know that, and that there are things that we can all do to actually just be healthier. Even if we don't think that we are in a problem position ourselves, we can always look to try and be better and look at new opportunities. And so what are a few things, and you were just talking about a few actually, that we could or should would be doing to help us with our own mental well-being during this really challenging, difficult time?
So I'm trying to jump in quickly. So something that I've recognized that people are doing that is that could help is develop a routine. So what we are finding in mental health is when individuals drop that routine and they don't have a proper time to get up, a proper time to eat, a proper time to sleep, and everything is just all being tumbled in together, we are recognizing that the mental health concerns are escalating. So if there's any takeaway from anyone today, is to really maintain those routines. So if you usually get up at 7, always get up at 7. So if you have your breakfast at 10, have your breakfast at 10. Like, maintain the routines if you're going to work, going to school, even if your life has changed that way. That is probably one of the best things from the perspective of mental health in adolescents and children. What we're seeing is maintaining those routines so that it's consistency, right? And then you know when your day flows, right? So this is sort of a takeaway, if that's helpful to anybody.
That's very helpful, Lucy. Thank you.
100% echo that. I have not only work, but I have 5 children. And so for me, during lockdown, we did the same thing. We got up at the same time, we got dressed, we got ourselves ready. When we would have gone to the bus, we took a walk, right? Because then the kids are in front of the screen for the rest of the day, doing that learning at home, you know, scheduled our little breaks, did our, like when school was over, played outside like we usually do, like just really tried to keep the routine in, because I feel like that's the only way I could kind of just keep it all together while all that was happening.
I think sleep is really important. I know we talk about routines, but sleep. I think for all of us that work in mental health, we talk about sleep all the time, the importance of sleep. I talk to a lot of people now who are, unfortunately, you know, they're binging on Netflix and they find they're staying up till 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the morning. It's really important as part of the routine to have a good sleep hygiene routine as well, right? You know, our body starts to understand that we're getting ready for bed, and you know, all the different chemicals in that start releasing. So keeping that sleep routine is just as important as well. Sleep is extremely vital for good mental well-being, for sure. So being mindful of that, that screen time, right? Not having that screen up in your face right before you fall asleep, at least for a half hour, if not an hour before you go to sleep. That's really, really important. And it's a hard one because we all live on it, right? But if you can even get that phone turned off a half hour before you go to bed and get it away from you, I think you'll actually find a difference in how you sleep, for sure.
I personally am a big proponent of mindfulness. And I think sometimes when people hear like mindfulness and meditation, they think they need to like sit and be all zen and not think about anything for 30 minutes, which most of us cannot do. That's extremely challenging. So I talk a lot about adding mindfulness into regular everyday activities. So I know for myself, if I have like a busy day when I'm eating my breakfast, I'm like rushing through and I'm like checking my phone to look at my appointments and like plan for the day, that I know personally I set up my day way better if I sit there. And this sounds really silly, but like if I'm eating a bowl of cereal, I'll think about, what does the cereal taste like? What is the texture in my mouth? What does the milk smell like when it gets all chocolatey? Like really just being in the zone. And like I work with some people where they do that with meals or they do that with dishes. Like when they're doing those everyday things, it's a really easy way when you already say have a really busy schedule and you're like, I don't have time to do like a half-hour meditation, fit it into your everyday life and just put down the phone, like Stacey was saying, try and unplug for a moment and just be super focused on what you're doing.
I would agree with what everyone has said. I think routine is very important. For me, it also comes down to basic wellness, sleeping, eating, some kind of movement, fresh air, doing something that's enjoyable. And like, if you can just do those main things, and then move on from there about journaling and mindfulness and music and art therapy. You know, like there's so many other things that you can do, but I think when you're not feeling well, just go to the basics. Have you eaten 3 meals today? Have you eaten at least once today? Because your body's going to have a response if you're not feeding it food. Like, we are humans, we need nutrition, we need sleep, we need exercise, we need fresh air. Just getting to the basics, I think, is the beginning, and then, you know, moving from there.
Well, that is a fantastic way to end this session, because those are all things that we can do. And we can do it in snippets, and, you know, a little reminder for people that are struggling, perhaps not just with that they've tuned in because they're struggling perhaps with their mental health, but might also be financially struggling or worried about food. There are programs and services for that as well. So there is help in our community to make sure that you and your family are looked after. And so, you know, to the No Wrong Door through mental health here, there's also 211, which is kind of our no wrong door for general information, referral for human and social supports. And so I remind people that they just have to call 211. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's also a website available, 211ontario.ca, to find access to a variety of different programs and services. And so, ladies, I am so very grateful that you've all taken time out of your personal schedules to join us this evening and to represent your organizations so beautifully, and to share your wisdom and your expertise, and most importantly, your local love. And from a United Way perspective, this is really so important, because, you know, we invest in amazing organizations to provide supports and services, many of which you've talked about here this evening. But those programs and services are only amazing because there are amazing staff who believe in helping others, and who are passionate to share their professional experience and their personal experience to help others be well and to do well. And so thank you on behalf of United Way and behalf of the community for joining us this evening and sharing. And there was a lovely little comment here in the end. Someone said to thank you all for showing up every day. And I echo that, because you and your colleagues have shown up every day, and we have, as a community, we have needed you this past year more than ever before, and likely in the year ahead, we will also need you more than ever before. And so please know how much we appreciate you and your co-workers and the impact you're having on our community. And so I thank you. I remind people that the recording will be sent out if you're here and you've registered, and it will be available on the United Way website, unitedwayoxford.ca, so that you can actually, if there were wonderful tips and tricks and information points that you took from this evening, please refer people to the website, because it will be there and it can be shown again and again. The intent is to make a difference, a positive difference in people's lives. And so thank you all, and be well, stay well. And again, thank you for showing your local love to the citizens of Oxford County.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.